Students at Gahanna-Lincoln High School have long grown accustomed to a steady load of homework, tests and quizzes over class material, and various group discussions. But what if our school was entirely project-based? Would that affect how we learn, how we view success and failure? GLHS teachers Mr. Eckerd, Mr. McGregor, and Mrs. Maciosi traveled to a school district that was entirely built around project-based learning. After witnessing students with different mindsets on failing in school, these teachers decided to interview their own classes to determine how students in the Gahanna district really defined failure. Their results are as follows.
I feel like failure comes a lot into like living up to people's expectations.
Give up or you break, or something happens and you can't do it anymore and you just stop trying.
Like you don't achieve what your parents want you to, then, or like anyone thinks you're going to do.
For me, the definition of failing is like, I don't know, it's not correcting a mistake, and I think a lot of students view making a simple mistake in the classroom, they correlate that with failure.
Not passing.
Not passing, okay.
I mean, failure is not something you can really define. It seems like a feeling all on its own, but you know when you hit it. It's kind of like that.
You know when you failed.
You know when you failed.
Not working to your full ability, and I think that's different from like when like we're graded and stuff, because then it's like our grades reflect whether or not we can meet levels that the teachers set for us and they expect us to meet.
I would say like if you like go into a class and you don't understand what you're doing, I think that's failure because you don't understand anything that's going on. But you still get an okay grade, but if you don't understand it, then what's the point?
Off of like the comparing thing, I know that I feel like the most failure like whenever I compare myself to other people, because everyone's different, you know, you can't really do that. And I've learned a lot from working with MD kids because everyone in that class is at a different level. Like some kids are autistic, some kids have Down syndrome, some can't walk. And so for them, like learning is different because they're all at different places.
It's like hard to understand like complete failure because I feel success comes out of whatever you make out of the moment. So like at least with Gahanna-Lincoln, personally, I think there's so many different random classes you can, like we have an honors music theory and we have like underwater robotics. So like if you really want to make the most out of something and be happy, there is a class you can take for that.
Like if you make mistakes in life, because everyone makes mistakes, but like if you learn from them, then that's how you're like trying your best and doing better. But if you keep making the same mistakes and you're not trying to improve, then that can be considered failure.
I know that when I experience failure, I feel like sometimes that I'm worthless, sometimes that I can't do anything right.
I think that failure for me might be different as it is to me, like different like from someone else, because if I'm doing my best, then that's the best I can do, and if she's doing her best, that's the best she can do. So even though the grades differ, they might be doing like the best that they can do.
Failure isn't a permanent thing. It's a very fleeting, like the disappointment you feel when you feel you failed is so fleeting. It's how you respond after that that defines whether you succeed or fail, because if you can't learn from something, it's pointless and that's when you have failed. But I feel like we define failure too early. Like a mistake or a disappointment isn't necessarily failure.
I feel like there's also where we have like the academic view of failure, but then there's so many extracurriculars. So like failure, not making a team, not making a play, not making whatever goal you set for yourself is also a failure.
When you feel like you've failed the people that matter most to you, and then you just sit there wondering like, what did I do?
People's individual definitions of success and failures, I think, reflect their values a lot. Like when you ask someone like who is successful and you look at society, you might say like people who are famous or like really rich and stuff.
When they tell you that you fail and you're not good, it makes you give up. And for me at least, when they say, oh, you're good at this, but can you try something else, it helps me. It brings me up in it, and it makes me even try better to succeed.
Failing as a freshman could be, dang, I got an A-. Or like failing.
My brother is like, he did so many great things in high school and college, and now like I'm here. I mean, I'm not nearly as good as everything he did, but I still feel like I have to live up to what he did. And
failure to me is like the true meaning of failure is giving up, or not really taking the time to do the best that you can.
You learn from your mistakes,
you kind of have to fail to know what you're going to do wrong. Because if you're always right, like, I don't know, you're not going to learn what's wrong. If you fail, then you know that that's wrong and you can fix it.
Everything is so competitive. Like, back like when my parents were going to school, like the ACT score to get into Ohio State was so much lower than it has to be now. So now like students are under like so much pressure to get the higher grades, so we have to be studying like twice as much as they had to like back then.
I hear things all the time like you have to get good grades, you have to do well on the ACT, you have to also be involved in other things because you can't just be a one-sided student. So I guess just hearing all these expectations and then like researching like colleges I want to go to and seeing like the average requirements and stuff like that, I feel like if I can't meet every single one of those requirements, I failed.
Because like young, like you always hear about you're going to go to elementary school, then you're going to go to middle school or junior high, then high school, and then college. Like you have to do all of that. And there's no choice to go to school. I would always fight my parents. I don't want to go to school. I don't like it. Even when I was in first grade, I remember crying on the phone to my mom saying I don't want to go. That plan like set out for you, and then as soon as you put a glitch in it and something goes wrong, like that's what I feel like failure could be. As soon as college comes and then you like mess up at your GPA and it's gone down a bunch, then it's just like you failed because you're supposed to go to college with a good GPA because that's what the normal people do.
Yeah. If you don't go to college and if you don't do this, if you don't do well, you're not gonna have a good life. Like, which is not true. Like I know people who like never went to college and they're still doing fine. Like they're successful. Like you. So like the way that like our society is run, it's pretty much like if you don't go to college, you're gonna be stuck at McDonald's like flipping burgers. Like the way, which is like really sucks for some kids because a lot of kids like I know school is just not their thing. And
you need to try and do this, 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 and this. I don't think a lot of us have time for sleep.
Yeah.
Like I know some people, they're in karate, ice skating, band, and all these different activities, and yet they still maintain a high GPA and stuff like that. And I look at other people, I'm like, I would like to spend time with my friends and sleep, but at the same time, you have all this pressure to do well. So how do you find the balance and try not to fail at the same time?
We're so like stressed out about getting decent grades because that is important, you know, looking towards college and stuff, that we don't actually like have any time to learn. Like I know that I'm doing homework all the time, and so I have no time to like actually look into what I'm interested in.
Like it's inevitable in school because you're surrounded by so many students who do so many of the same things as you that you more than likely you won't be the best at everything.
Yeah, and then sometimes for me, I'm like afraid to fail, so I don't take risks and try as hard as I can. For like classes, you know, when we have to like raise our hands and speak out in class, I'm sometimes afraid to answer the questions because I don't want people to judge me. And like in today's society, I feel like everyone judges everyone.
Okay. I feel that grades define me. If I don't get an A or B, then I am a failure to myself. And you know, there are a lot of tests that I wish I could take orally by speaking it because I do have bad test anxiety and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know this. You know, if I could just talk about it, explain it, then there are good chances I'd be able to ace that test.
I was so hard on myself freshman year, and like if I got that A-, I was like, oh my gosh, like that was the failure. But now I'm like, if I'm not happy, I was so hard on myself that I wasn't happy, so now I'm happy. I'm still getting good grades, but like you just have to kind of find a happy, like a medium.
Now, our goal is what we've been like raised and shaped into like this culture is just like we are driven to be the best. We are driven to excel over other people, and that's kind of what we know. Especially like this is what this generation knows. Like it brings up a lot of questions. Is everything that's not a success, is that a failure, or like is there something in between? And something that like I think that if it were to start changing, the culture would probably have to, at least in my opinion, would probably have to start as kindergartners, you know, starting as like as young of an age as possible, as soon as you get into the school.
In school, the greater value has been placed on like what, like not necessarily like what you learn, but what you're able to like produce from it. So I think that like as students we worry about how many points, because it's like if I fail and it's like 100 points then my grade goes down. So I think the greater value is placed on like your grades and not necessarily what you have taken from the lesson.
Fixation on like points and the point system, just because like throughout high school, all these different classes, people like the homework's due today and like they haven't done it, they just copy it down really quick. They don't care about the material that's on it. They don't care about like learning on it. They just have to get those points so they get a good grade. I definitely think that's like the wrong way to do it, just because you're not learning anything, you're just trying to get the points, which doesn't even really reflect the grades as you didn't really learn it.
I feel like we're just kind of learning to regurgitate it. We're not actually learning the real material. I sometimes feel like we don't like go into depth enough on like everybody's individual understanding.
Okay.
It's true, I agree with it. It's sad that I feel like the education system, or at least like my world, like when I view it, I focus more on getting the point, getting the one letter on the top of my paper versus did I actually learn.
And I think there's not enough emphasis on understanding. I think it's more, can you do it? Can you do it for a test? And then, is it going to be used again? No. If not, then you can forget it until the final. And if it is, then if you can't get it, then you're just not going to do well.
And if we need to be taught at a young age that grades are not everything, because I mean that's what we're taught. Like that's my goal, and that's my goal is to get an A, and that's and I want to be the best that I can be. And there's a picture kind of floating around the internet where it's like our education system nowadays is the test is who can climb the tree the best. Like now everyone needs to go climb this tree, and it's like an elephant and a monkey and like a snake, like all these random like different animals, and just because the elephant is an elephant doesn't mean that he failed because he's an elephant. Like everyone's different, and
couldn't climb the tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
But a lot of points you get penalized for learning it wrong or doing it wrong, and it's like learning involves failure. You're gonna mess up, but when you're like so many times, it's if you mess up at all, oh no, my grade is done for the whole quarter because it's this one little point, or it's like. Where does your health versus your points come in?
Like success and failure in school is like really determined on time, because it's like how fast like will it take me, like, or how long will it take me to get an A on this test, but not like how long will it take me to learn this. And yeah, you might like fail a test and like that's a failure, or you might get an A, but then like after that test you may know how to do it, but you still failed the test even though you know how to do it. And so it's like your success didn't even matter because you learned it too late.
I feel like state like mandates and like all the tests and everything are put in place to help ensure that we learn or try to make our learning better. But by putting them in place, it doesn't allow for growth. You never go beyond what you have to learn. There's no place to expand. Instead of trying to make people meet expectations, they're keeping them below the line or just at the line, never above it.
Find another way for students to like check that, for teachers to check that students are, grasping the material and learning from it and actually understanding what, the concepts are.
It's been burned into my brain that I feel like even if you took away the grade system, I would probably, because I'm still in that mindset, I'd probably still follow the grade system.
Sure.
But if you incorporated that idea into like someone who's younger and more impressionable, it might carry it through, it might help them throughout their years.
Okay.
Like, I know I get tests back and it's like, oh, I know how to do that. I just made a stupid mistake, and I end up losing like 20 percentage points on the test just from stupid mistakes. Give them a chance to retake it. Give them a chance to prove what they can do.
How do you tell the difference between someone who failed it because they couldn't understand the concept and somebody that failed it because they really didn't try? And how many times are you going to give that person a chance that's not trying before it's a waste of your time?
If I don't do well in something, I have the opportunity to redo it. I'll do it in a heartbeat.
The experience I've had with some teachers is like they don't seem to care if you fail. Like if you fail a test, like I failed a test once and my teacher didn't really even, acknowledge that I failed, and he didn't ask if I wanted to retake it. He just kind of let it go. And I feel like if teachers really would, just, persist and be like, hey, do you really want to, do you want to retake that? You should retake that.
I have some teachers that like care, but then I have some teachers that will they'll make sure that I try to do something, or they'll like ask me if I need help to perform it again, or they'll just encourage me to ask questions if I don't understand. But some teachers just don't.
Like if you fail at something, they'll just be like, well, if everybody else got this, then why can't you? And just go.
Depends on like the way the teacher tells you like you failed. Like if they're like shaming you kind of, then you're just like, well, whatever, like I don't need this, like I don't need to do this. But if they're like telling you like, oh, it's okay, like you can just try again next time, then it makes you want to actually like succeed in it.
Okay. Most of the time, but it's like when you do it at school, there's a lot of people that I know that just completely shut down. Because speaking for myself with last year, if I failed one thing in class, I just stopped because of the way that my teachers responded.
But some people, they could get an A in intelligence and an F in hard work. You know what I mean? So it's like it measures two different things. So it's really hard to tell. And with
last year, I took regular because I had so many other things going on. I got into that class and I would just write papers, and I know I could have done better on some of them, but my teacher still passed me with like 100 because it was better compared to the other students in the class. And it bothered me because I don't know where I messed up. I don't know where I failed. And it would have been more beneficial if I had like a harder grader and stuff like that.
Because I have some honors classes and some regular classes, I feel like in the honors classes, like you said, the teacher's assumption, the teacher just thinks that they're like angels because they're in an honors class, so they treat them differently. And I feel like in my other classes that they think that we're not, like some of the people in the class they're not as good because they don't understand something. So in the honors class, I feel like they focus more on the understanding of everything because they think so highly of their students and they want them to learn. But in the regular class, they're just trying to push them to get the material so they know it already. They don't really focus on their understanding.
I've been in honors classes and regular classes like she has, and I've had some teachers that if you're in a higher level class, they'll think of you because in theory you can get better scores, and in theory you have a better chance at understanding the material, that they won't go in depth enough, and they'll say, oh, you're smart enough and you can understand it. And sometimes that's not always true.
The help that they have in school and stuff, it's not like you can't get the help, but like there's a general like idea that passing is what you want to do. But I mean, sometimes you fail and you fail, but it's here if you do need the help. Yeah.
And I think classes should become more of a thing where you can control what grade you have. Like I know in our English class, like if you write your essay and you try really hard on it, like you're gonna get a really good grade on your essay if you try. Maybe you don't understand fully the prompt, or like maybe you got something wrong, but you're gonna get credit for trying your best. Whereas in like one of my math classes a couple years ago, like I could study as hard as I wanted to and fail tests still. Like I think that it's really cool when you can control your grade by your work ethic and
yes.
not your intelligence.
Okay.
And there's like not a point system. They have like colors. It's kind of weird, but they like assign a color to the work that you did. So if it was project art and it was really good, they give you like a green. If it's yellow, it means you might need to work on a little bit more. So they'll give it back to you, and you can like just play around with it and try to get it up to a green. And I guess like this whole color system is, there's no points applied. It's just kind of, it shows your progress, and it gives us more of a, I guess, chance to kind of prove that we've learned and not just think I need this score to get a 70 in this class to pass or whatever.
I know especially in special aspects, a lot of people had issues. Some people couldn't get algae to grow, some people couldn't program their robots to do what they wanted. And I mean, they experienced all these failures, yet they still kept going because in that class it's like okay to fail because it's science and not everything always turns out right.
The thing that we had in our English class last year was like a participation grade, and it wasn't necessarily like, okay, did you try in English? But like, if you were paying attention in class, if you were doing the best that you could do, if you took advantage of your time that was allotted to you, yes, there were papers, but the papers were never graded until you said, or were never finalized until you said, I'm content, up to like the end of the 9 weeks.
Okay.
And they kept handing it back and saying, this is what's wrong.
So rewrites.
Yeah.
You did a lot of rewriting.
Yeah. And with the participation, you 100% control your grade.
Like, you know, art classes and stuff like that, you know, like if you're just kind of doing your own thing and you're not learning really correctly, like you're learning it, but you're like you're kind of allowed to do your own thing. I don't think you're worried about like your points as much as like you are about your work. Makes sense.
I loved math because he just applied everything to what we were doing in some sort of way. And like if that was whether doing a handstand on a desk or just making a practical joke about something. But I think that, you know, it's not just the subject material, but teachers can also make it so that you believe in yourself that you can do that. And they can make you feel good about your stuff.
As far as with math, it needs to, like, I feel like we just go through the motion. Like, we learn a squared plus b squared equals c squared and learn how to do it, but we don't understand the why. Like, give me a real life situation that would apply to this. Something that I can actually use, like how we would, I think that's how I feel about it. And also, I'm afraid too that when I get to the point after high school, me and my mom are really going to be best friends because I will call her. Like, I will have her on speed dial. Like, Mom, okay, it's tax season, come please help me. Like, that's how I feel. I'm scared.
You would use the math and the science and everything to something that everyone's going to learn. Like, or everyone needs to know. Like I said, like, I'm terrified when I grow up. I'm not going to know how to, like, I'm not going to be able to pay my taxes. I'm not going to be able to, well, like, I'm scared of, like,
I know.
We're doing all of that. Like, I feel like I'm going to be calling my mom every 5 seconds. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So if they would use that to teach us math.
The same math teacher 2 years in a row, and I like really like respect her because every time we learn something, I feel like she goes into depth. And if somebody doesn't understand something, she doesn't stop class to do it, but she like speaks to them about it, and she like offers to come in before school and after school. And I think like that relationship like helps build students like better everything, because if a student feels like they can trust a teacher to like teach them, then I feel like the student will go the extra mile to like impress or like work harder for that better grade or for the better understanding.
When I failed something, in fact I like failed something today, I didn't want to talk to my teacher because I was partially like embarrassed, and at the same time I didn't want to make them upset. And since I don't want to talk to my teacher, I just kind of hope that they would talk to me instead of just...
I don't feel comfortable asking questions. Like, even if I really need help, I won't ask a teacher a question if I don't feel comfortable around them. And in turn, that affects my grade because I won't ask them a question. Just because, like, if it feels to me like they honestly do not care whether I pass or fail their class, then I honestly, like, I don't want to go up to them and ask them because then I feel like I'm burdening them.
Like, a lot of my teachers in the past like are here early and like have study sessions. I feel like that part is the student's responsibility to go to those if they're having trouble. Like, you can't, like, I feel like you can't just have trouble in a class and then instantly blame it on the teacher, because you have to do something about it yourself, because they're not going to be with you the next year or the year after that. It's like it's almost their responsibility to like be worried about the entire class and not just one person. Like, I think it's like you're responsible for yourself, and you got to go in and talk to them and not wait for them to come to you.
Yeah.
It's like, I can kind of understand why some teachers maybe wouldn't want to go that way, because like when we go to college, there are going to be a lot of professors that really like they don't care if you like pass or fail their class or anything like that. Like, they're not going to be, you're going to be in a lecture hall with like 500 students. So like, what are you to them if you failed their class? Like, it doesn't matter to them. And that's why, like, I feel like, yeah, teachers should be approachable, but I can kind of like understand how some teachers like they can approach their teaching in a way that prepares us for college.
But when teachers are passionate about what they teach, it makes a class so much more enjoyable, and like it like lets you get into what you're trying to learn. And if you have a teacher who doesn't seem passionate about what they're teaching, or they don't seem to care about if their students are doing well, or how their students are doing, or if their students are doing all right at all, I feel like that defeats the purpose of trying to teach them at all.
Sure.
What if we just learned skill sets? Like, you know, learning in school is good because you're a rounded person who knows things that don't really matter. But what if we spent those grade school years figuring out what you're good at in life?
Like Eastland Fair.
I will never be a mathematician, but I might be a really good athlete. That's just, each person has their own skill sets, and if we just learned those things, then people would be actually more connected. People would be able to learn social skills and connection and how to interact with people
You're
in
saying
manners.
people should, about like the classes you take in school, even as far as like gearing towards like what you want to do in life, it doesn't even have to be so much that, but like things that we need to learn in the future. Like personal finance, that's something I feel like you need more so than algebra or pre-calculus. Even workshop or auto shop is something you need because in the future, everyone is going to have a car breakdown, is going to have a refrigerator, toilet breakdown or something, and you need to know how to fix it. Otherwise, how are you going to, you know?
The world needs parts.
Yeah.
I think if we were able to find a way to develop those type of skills in all classrooms, not just theater or speech, but a math class or a science class, the learning would almost take care of itself. Because if every classroom could have a discussion like this where we feel comfortable enough to open up and discuss how we learn and how we need to do things, then when you create that kind of environment, then the grades and the assessments all kind of fall into place. You can't fail if everyone's willing to support you, because failure is failure is so permanent, and if everyone's willing to bring you back up after you make a mistake, not necessarily failing, then you can't fail.
Friends that go to a different school and they have specific like chunks of like programs, like if you want to go into science and math, or if you want to go to like English or like a different thing, then you can like, those are the classes you take on a normal basis. So it's like that's what you want to do, what you want to become, and it's just like, I wish we could have that option here. Like I really like offer specific like classes, but sometimes you can't fit them into your schedule. But if you could just like have that like group of classes that you could just go to and you would be so happy taking, but then you're like, oh,
Your safe place.
I have to go to chemistry.
Okay. Like because of school, that will let us down and like make us feel like a failure. But when you find that one thing that like you know you're good at and that you love and like you have a passion for, like it's not gonna let you down.
There's gonna be some people who are just not even gonna show up. Like if you know you can't fail, then why would you even come?
Yeah,
There's no point.
No one likes doing homework, and like most people do homework like because you have to. Like you're gonna lose a lot of points. But like if there's no points on that, if you can't fail, like you know, like.
I feel like a lot of people, and including myself, would, like you said, be a lot more lazy, and they wouldn't, you know, actually learn the material. And then when they go on to bigger and better things, they're gonna fail at it because they didn't learn the material because they always just got these good grades and they never really got into depth about the material. They would always just fail at bigger and better things because they didn't learn the material. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. I would obviously be pretty lazy at first if I knew I couldn't fail. But then also I would feel more obligated to push myself because there is no way I can fail. So if I keep trying and I keep going, I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
That some people would want to like try harder because if you know that everyone around you is not going to work, then you could like work and become successful compared to everyone else. That's what I would do.
Volunteer basis, there's some people who will step up to the challenge, and then there's those people who you're talking about, like, yes, seniors and stuff, like I'm a sophomore, but like there are those people who wouldn't want to try at all. But like then you would see who the true leaders are in like your grade or like in the school.